I noticed the way people were seated before I noticed what was said. The adults in the living room, angled toward the television that wasn't on. The kids on the floor, close enough to be included but not close enough to interrupt. My grandmother in her chair by the window, light coming in at her shoulder, her hands folded as if she were waiting for a photograph. I had arrived late, which had become my role. Late but with dessert, late but reliable. I slipped off my coat, put the pie on the counter, and let myself be absorbed into the familiar hum of voices that didn't need me to contribute. My brother's daughter, 13 now, all elbows and certainty, was talking. She had the confidence of someone who had never been corrected in public. I caught only the end of the sentence at first. The way you catch the last note of a song and still know the tune. She thinks she's special because she's childless and rich. There was a pause, the kind that exists only to check whether a line has landed. My mother laughed. Not a polite laugh. Not a surprised one. She laughed until she cried, until she leaned back on the couch and wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand, breathless with it. Something in the room aligned itself around that sound. The adults smiled. Someone repeated the phrase, amused by its efficiency. The girl grinned, emboldened. I stood there with my keys still in my hand. I remember thinking with a clarity that surprised me that no one was going to interrupt this moment. That if it were going to be corrected, it would have to be by me. I didn't say anything. There are silences that ask to be filled, and there are silences that seal. I chose the second one. I walked over to my grandmother. She looked up at me, confused, then pleased. I kissed her cheek and told her I'd call tomorrow. She squeezed my hand the way she always did, as if she were passing something back to me. No one noticed me leave. Driving home, I replayed the laughter more than the words. The words belonged to a child. The laughter belonged to adults who knew better and chose comfort instead. I felt an old, familiar tightening in my chest, the feeling of being useful but not quite human. At home, the quiet was thick. I didn't turn on any lights. I sat at the kitchen table and let the evening settle. For years, I had told myself that the financial help I provided was just that, help, that it existed outside of family dynamics, outside of approval or respect. Money is a neutral tool. But neutrality is a story we tell ourselves to avoid naming power. I thought about the college accounts, how they had started small, automatic transfers I barely noticed. How no one had asked me to set them up. It had simply been understood that I would. Birthdays came with casual updates about balances, delivered like weather reports. Gratitude had faded into assumption so gradually I hadn't marked the moment it happened. I slept badly. Not because I was torn, but because something was rearranging itself quietly, like furniture moved in the dark. In the morning, I made coffee and sat down with my laptop. The accounts were exactly where I'd left them, each one labeled, each one funded solely by me. I hadn't thought much about that detail before. Ownership is easy to ignore when everyone is polite. I logged in. I reviewed the terms. I called the institution to confirm what I already knew. The person on the other end of the line was professional, efficient. There was no judgment in their voice, no curiosity about motives. Authority, when it's procedural, doesn't need a story. Yes, they said. You're the sole contributor. You can reassign the funds. I didn't rush. I moved deliberately, checking each step. I transferred the balances out, one by one, back into an account that bore only my name. When it was done, the screen refreshed and the totals read 0. It felt less like erasing something and more like returning it to its original shape. The messages started mid-morning. First from my brother, confused, asking if there had been a mistake. Then from my mother, sharp with disbelief. The tone shifted quickly, from inquiry to accusation, from what happened to how could you? I didn't reply right away. I took a walk instead, noticing the cold air, the way my breath sounded louder than usual. I thought about the girl's comment, how it had been repeated like a clever observation rather than a warning sign. When I did respond, it was brief. I'm no longer funding the accounts. No explanation. No apology. Boundaries don't improve with footnotes. The reaction was immediate and intense. Words like punishing and selfish appeared. My mother called it cruel. My brother called it irresponsible. No one mentioned the laughter. There was a moment, later that afternoon, when doubt brushed past me. Not regret, something thinner. The awareness that this would change things in ways I couldn't fully predict. Relationships don't collapse all at once. They fray thread by thread. That night, I called my grandmother as promised. She asked how I was. I told her the truth that I was fine, and that things were shifting. Sometimes, she said after a pause, people confuse generosity with obligation. It's kinder to correct them early, but it's never too late. We didn't talk about the money. We didn't need to. Weeks passed. The messages slowed, then stopped. Family gatherings continued without me. I heard about them secondhand, filtered through neutral updates. There was no dramatic reconciliation, no sudden understanding. Just distance newly measured. What surprised me most was not the loss, but the space it created. I noticed how much energy I had been spending maintaining an image that benefited everyone but me. Without that role, I felt quieter, more solid. I still help people. I still give. But now I do it where respect is part of the exchange, where silence isn't mistaken for consent. Sometimes I think about that moment in the living room, the way Lauder filled it. I don't replay it with anger anymore. I replay it as information. And information, once received, changes what you're willing to fund.